The construction of the Kaaba. According to a narration in religious books, Adam, A.S. and Eve were separated from each other after the fall but later met at Arafat and walked together towards the west. Adam, A.S. prayed to Allah that he would give him back the pillar of light that he was worshipping Allah around in paradise. Upon this prayer, the pillar of light appeared and Adam, A.S. around it worshipped Allah by circumambulating. This pillar of light disappeared in the time of the Prophet Seth, A.S., leaving only a black stone behind. However, he built the Kaaba in the form of a pillar of light and placed this black stone next to it. Today what we call the Hajar al-Aswad is this stone. After the flood of Noah, A.S., this building was left under the sands for a long time. Later, Prophet Abraham, A.S., by the command of Allah traveled to the surroundings of the Kaaba and left his wife Hagar and son. 4818380266700056324540957500 Ishmael, A.S. to settle there. With his son, he located the foundations N257. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and form. N258. Of the Kaaba that had been built by Seth, Sheed, A.S. and rebuilt it. When he completed the construction of Kaaba he prayed to Allah. And when Abraham prayed, "My Lord, make this a region of security and bestow upon its people fruits, such of them as believe in Allah and the Last Day." Baqarah 2-126. As a result of this prayer, we can say that in Mecca, most people enjoy the sweetness of faith as well as the good taste of the foods and fruits. The Kaaba has been rebuilt 11 times. The first time it was built by the angels. The second time it was built by Adam, A.S. The third by Seth, A.S. The fourth by Abraham, A.S. The fifth by the tribe of Amalika, the sixth by Jerumi tribe, the seventh by the Qusay, the leader of the Meccans, the eighth by the tribe of Quraysh, the ninth by Abdullah b. Zubair, who lived in the first generation, named as Tabian, after the death of the Prophet, J. It was rebuilt the 10th time by Hajjaj the tyrant and the 11th time by the Ottoman Sultan, Murat IV. The Ottomans showed great respect for the Holy Lands. The refined good manners which were a manifestation of this respect were beautifully exemplified during the reign of Murad IV. The Kaaba was flooded and the walls were damaged. For repair, the chief architect, Ridvan Aga, was sent to Mecca. Having done the necessary research on the structure of the Kaaba, he reported his findings. Due to his full respect for the Kaaba, the house of Allah, he could not say that some of the walls were destroyed, saying instead, "Some of the walls of the Kaaba have gone to prostration." 813,435,135,445,500. They also took precaution in order to prevent the beasts of labor from passing water over these sacred places. All these reveal the great respect that the Ottomans showed to these places. This high esteem started from the capital itself. At that time, when they crossed the Bosphorus, that first spot Muslims landed at was called Haram, since this land would connect them to the Kaaba. Hence, they started to behave, as they are required to behave in the Haram. They did not approve of any disrespectful behavior on their way to Kaaba. The 123,888,522,098,000 2332355971550 Pilgrimage to Mecca. Memory of Nabi the poet is a very striking example of the Ottoman attitude towards these holy lands. In the year 1678, he set out for pilgrimage accompanied by many statesmen. When they had a rest break, he saw that one of the high-rank soldiers in the group had extended his legs towards the city of the Prophet, J. Madinah al-Munawwara. In Ottoman culture, extending the legs towards a person is considered rude. Nabi felt very sorry for this heedless behavior of the general and composed the following poem. Beware of the heedlessness, this is the place where the beloved of Allah lived. This place is the loci of divine glances, the post of Mustafa, Prophet Muhammad. O Nabi, enter this place with full respect. This place is circumambulated by the angels and kissed by the prophets. When the caravan approached to Madinah just before the sunrise prayer, Nabi heard his poem recited by the muezzins of the Madinah. Nabi was very excited to hear this and he rushed to learn how this happened, since he wrote the poem the night before and no one had learned it. Nabi found the muezzin and asked him, "How did you learn this knot?" The muezzin answered, "Last night in my sleep the Prophet, J. told me in a vision. From my community, a poet called Nabi is coming to visit me and he is full of my love to the extreme. For his love for me, meet him with his own poem when he enters the city." Hence we learned the poem from him, and obeyed his command. Nabi was sobbing and shedding tears like rain saying, "It means that the messenger of Allah, J. included me among his nation, the son of the two worlds accepted me as a member of his community." 48183804279900. As we have seen in the example of Nabi, the important thing in the pilgrimage rites is to behave with the highest esteem towards the Prophet, J. and the house of Allah. N 259. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and Form. 260. The Kaaba, which is also called the House of Allah, has been a sacred place from the time of the first human being Adam, a.s. The Quran commands visiting these places with special rituals. Lo, the first sanctuary appointed for mankind was that at Becca, a blessed place, a guidance to the peoples, wherein are plain memorials of Allah's guidance, the place where Abraham stood up to pray, and whosoever entereth it is safe. And pilgrimage to the house is a duty unto Allah for mankind, for him who can find a way thither. As for him who disbelieveth, let him know that, lo, Allah is independent of all creatures. Al-Imran 3, 96-97. As a manifestation of the Islamic spirit, everyone is equal in the lines of congregational prayers. If the head of government comes late to the mosque, he prays at the back. If a poor Muslim comes early, he prays in the first line. People are required to pray wherever there is an empty place. Uniforms and epaulets are useless in the mosque. This concept of equality was manifested in the pilgrimage on even a fuller scale. As everyone is buried with a white shroud, all the pilgrims wear the same clothes and the difference of qualities in garments completely disappears. Pilgrimage represents a level of equality that is only repeated after death. As a head of state is buried in a white shroud, even the poorest is buried with the very same shroud. Pilgrims covering their chests with a large towel and their waists with a large towel reflect the state of the dead in their graves. We should know that death is the inescapable law that Allah has enforced for all transient beings. The length of life is counted with complete precision so that even the number of breaths is counted and recorded. There is an appointed time of death, ajal, for every person, and this may never change. We have never heard of anyone who escaped death. Since the time of our death is unknown to us, we should not neglect to perform the duty of pilgrimage. Otherwise, the following bad news from the Prophet, J, will be valid for us. If someone dies without going for pilgrimage, even though he had the requirements of food, drink and transportation, there is nothing that will prevent this person to die as a Jew or Christian. 8,134,352,159,000. Tirmidhi, Hajj, 3. N. 2332355965200 Pilgrimage to Mecca. This clear warning of the Prophet, J, reminds those heedless Muslims who do not perform this commandment even though they have the necessary means that they will be punished in the hereafter. The negligence of this commandment means to despise the commandment itself. Pilgrimage is commanded to be performed at least once in a lifetime. Therefore it is a great mistake for able Muslims to delay it. The Prophet, J, states that those who are required to perform pilgrimage should rush to do it. Jamul Fawed, 2, 77. The house of Allah is full of the reminders of Abraham, a.s. and his family's trust and submission to Allah. When we mention the words trust, submission and pilgrimage, immediately the names Abraham, a.s. and Ishmael, a.s. come to our minds. Due to their sincerity, pilgrimage was made an obligatory act of worship that will continue until the last day of the world. Trust in Allah means to depend on, to have full confidence in, and to appoint someone as a representative. In Sufism, it signifies one whose heart is filled with Allah, only trusting in Him and seeking refuge only in Him. When Allah the Almighty asked Moses, a.s. about his rod, he answered, "It is my rod, I lean on it." Allah the Almighty said, "Throw it down," since this dependence on the rod shadowed his full dependence on Allah. Concerning to whom we should trust, Allah the Almighty states in the Quran, "In Allah let believers put their trust." Tawbah 9:51, Ibrahim 14:11. So put your trust in Allah, if ye are indeed believers. Maida 5:23, 65-3. And whoever trusts in Allah, He is sufficient for him. Talaq. The Prophet, J, states that if we trust in Allah fully, He will sustain us as He sustains the birds that leave their nests hungry in the morning and return to them with a full stomach in the evening. 56324561912500481838023558500. Trust in Allah does not signify giving up all kinds of necessary steps, and to ignore the laws of nature. It means to put full trust in N261. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and form. N262. Allah after fulfilling the necessary conditions to reach a result and not to trust in the means itself, ignoring Allah's will. Rather the slave should seek refuge in the power of Allah. Allah the Almighty states, "And take counsel with them in the affair. So when you have decided, then place your trust in Allah. Surely Allah loves those who trust." Al-Imran 3-159. Allah is the helper of the believer in both worlds. Whoever puts full trust in Him, He suffices for the needs of the slave. Real happiness and bliss lie in returning to Him both on the personal and social level by asking His help and putting our trust in Him. In Arabic, the word salima signifying submission and connotes the meaning of yielding, the will, and accepting the acts of Allah with pleasure. The Prophet Abraham, a.s., had filled his heart with the love of Allah. When the angels asked Allah, "How can Abraham, a.s., be your friend who has his life, possessions and family, that will keep him engaged from you?" Then, Allah the Almighty showed the angels His submission to the divine will in 3 different tests. The first test was about his life, that when he was about to be catapulted into the fire the angels rushed to help him, but he refused their offer and said, "I do not need your help. Who gave the power of burning to the fire? Allah is the best of helpers." In that way he took refuge only in Allah. As a reward of this sincere submission to Allah's power, Allah the Almighty commanded the fire. We said, "O fire, be coolness and peace for Abraham, a.s." Anbiya 21-69. In the second test, he was tested about his wealth. Gabriel had gone to Abraham, a.s., and begged for some of his flock. When he praised Allah he said, "Take this flock and they are yours." 81,343,524,320,500. In that way, he also successfully achieved the test of sacrificing wealth for the love of Allah. 123,888,522,923,500. 2332355965200. Pilgrimage to Mecca. The real servanthood to Allah is nothing but submission to Him. However, submission is based on love and obedience. We have seen the best example of this submission based on love in Abraham, a.s. His own life, family and wealth did not prevent him in fulfilling the divine commands due to his full devotion and submission to Allah. In order to reward his sincerity, the rites of pilgrimage will be performed up until Judgment Day to symbolize his submission and trust in Allah. His tongue reflecting the situation in his heart continuously would say, "I submit myself to the Lord of the worlds." Baqarah 2-131. In addition to the examples of Abraham, a.s., and Ishmael, a.s., who showed unequaled levels of sacrifice and submission to Allah, the Prophet Muhammad, j., showed the rituals and essentials of pilgrimage in his farewell pilgrimage. In particular, his farewell speech that was made on this occasion is the best guidance for pilgrims until Judgment Day. In this speech he designated the basic rights and responsibilities of Muslims and strengthened the lines of Muslims with love and mercy. Those who intend to go on pilgrimage should prepare themselves both spiritually and materially. Trust in Allah does not mean to ignore making provisions for the journey of pilgrimage. Some of the Yemenites would go to pilgrimage without taking any essentials such as food and drink, saying, "We trust in Allah." When they reached Mecca they would beg due to hunger. In order to warn about this kind of wrong conception of trust in Allah, the Quran states, "And make provision, for surely the provision is the guarding of oneself, and be careful of your duty to me, O men of understanding." Baqarah 2-197. 4818380109664500 is understood from the verse, a Muslim needs both kinds of provisions in the Holy Lands. He needs material provisions like enough food, and spiritual food like submission, patience and so on. Only the Muslim who has purified his heart from spiritual diseases can achieve this. Only through possessing such a heart can we understand the real ity of the acts of worship, in particular the pilgrimage, as indicated by Rumi in the following story. N 263. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and Form. 264. Bayezid, the sheikh of the community, was hurrying to Mecca for the Hajj, the greater pilgrimage, and Umrah, the lesser one. In every city to which he went he would first search out the venerable saints. He would roam about, asking, who is there in this city that is relying on spiritual insight? He did this since he believed that wherever he went in his travels he should search for a holy person. Allah the Almighty said in the Quran, "Ask the followers of the remembrance, zikr, if ye know not." Anbiya 21-7. Therefore Moses, a.s. was commanded to visit Khidr who had spiritual knowledge. Bayezid was looking for the Khidr of the time and he suddenly saw an old man with a stature resembling the new moon. He saw in him the majesty and the speech of holy men. His eyes were sightless and his heart was as illumined as the sun. Bayezid sat down before him and asked him about his condition. He found him to be a dervish and also a family man. The old man asked, "Whither art thou bound, O Bayezid? To what place wouldst thou bear the baggage of travel in a strange land?" Bayezid answered, "I start for the Kaaba and have 200 silver dirhams as provision for the road." The old man told him, "Place some of those dirhams before me and the other needy. First enter their hearts in order to open the eyes of your soul. Get an endless life. First fulfill the pilgrimage with your soul, and then continue the trip with a refined heart. Although the Kaaba is the house of his religious service, my form is the house of his innermost secrets. The Kaaba is the house built by Abraha the son of Azar, my heart is the loci of Allah's majesty. If you have spiritual insight, circumambulate the Kaaba of the heart. The heart is the Kaaba of the body, made out of earth. Allah commanded us to visit the visible Kaaba in order that we might attain to a Kaaba of the heart that has been purified from impurities. 81,343,593,662,500 Know that if you hurt a heart which is the loci of divine glances, even if you go to pilgrimage on foot, the rewards you attain will not cover the sin of breaking someone's heart. A perfect man is a treasure that contains divine secrets. If you want to see the manifestations of divine light, do not escape from the trials and difficulties. See Mesa 2-2218-2251. N 2332355965200 Pilgrimage to Mecca. Bayezid gave heed to these mystical sayings, and put them in his ear as a golden rain. Through the conversation of this sheikh, his heart received a share of mercy. He then continued his trip with a peaceful mind and heart. Through these kind of beautiful examples, Rumi guides the hearts to the truth of the pilgrimage and addresses the believers who intend to go on pilgrimage. When the time of pilgrimage arrives, go there with the intention of visiting and circumambulating the Kaaba. If you go with this intent, you will see the reality of Mecca. The reason why Rumi gives the example of pilgrimage is that it is a very delicate act of worship. Many legal things that are allowed in other times of the year are forbidden in this time. Therefore, the pilgrim first should prepare his heart to be able to perform this difficult duty. From the first moment the pilgrim intends to go on pilgrimage, Satan tries his best to corrupt its quality. The pilgrimage journey seems very easy and enjoyable, but it is full of difficulties. This is also true for the rites of pilgrimage, hence the pilgrim needs to adorn himself with patience and forbearance. Hence the pilgrim should pray, "O my Allah, please make it easy for me." We should not forget when we chant at the pilgrimage time, Labbaik Allahumma labbaik la sharika laka labbaik. Inal hamda wan nimata laka wal mulk la sharika laka. Here I am at your service, O Allah. Here I am at your service, I respond to your call, and I am obedient to your orders. You have no partner, here I am. Surely, all the praise and blessing and sovereignty are for you. You have no partner. As a matter of fact, we confirm that we are answering his invitation. We are admitting that in the kingdom of heavens and earth there is no partner with Allah. Hence, we are promising to him that we shall not obey the temptations of Satan and the ego. Otherwise, if we perform the pilgrimage heedlessly, without obeying the principles we have recounted so far, it will not benefit us. In 4818380266700056324540957500 particular. Those who go to the Holy Lands with illegal earnings and N265. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and Form. N266. Savings that are in conflict with the most essential principle of Islam, that is, no act of worship can be performed with religiously illegal earnings. Hence, their words, "We are at your service," will signify that, we are not at your service, since we broke the most significant rule of the pilgrimage. Hence we can say that the most important rule of the pilgrimage is halal, religiously legal, earnings, then secondly a sincere heart. Every time the pilgrim says, Labbaik, these words should light a fire in his heart. Only in that way can a believer approach Allah. Otherwise mere words without really meaning it have no benefit. Hadrat Husayn's face, the grandson of the Prophet, would turn pale whenever he said, Labbaik, fearing that the answer from Allah would be, La labbaik. May Allah enable us to perform the pilgrimage with both our bodies and souls. The principles of pilgrimage guide man to mercy and a more spiritual life. When he wears the special white seamless garment, called ihram, he leaves all sorts of rough and unkind behavior. It makes man kinder and nicer, since hunting animals, plucking the plants, breaking the green branches of trees and hurting creatures are forbidden during the days of pilgrimage. Allah the Almighty states in the Quran, "So whoever determines the performance of the pilgrimage therein, there shall be no intercourse nor fornication nor quarreling amongst one another. And whatever good you do, Allah knows it, and make provision, for surely the best provision is the guarding of oneself, and be careful of your duty to me, O men of understanding." Baqarah 2-197. The pilgrims will not fight and hurt others, they will behave nicely and kindly to others for the sake of their Creator. In particular, hurting the hearts of the believers is considered a big sin. Therefore Hadrat Omar would not kiss the black stone in order not to hurt other pilgrims due to the crowding. 81,343,540,703,500 in Islam. Every kind of worship begins with an intention. The intention for pilgrimage begins with wearing ihram. Having put on this special garment, the pilgrim is transformed into a spiritual state, leaving his 123,888,523,304,500. 2332355971550 pilgrimage to Mecca. Ordinary conduct. The white garment reminds him of death and the shroud. Hence he spends his time in contemplating death and how to make preparations for it. With all its eloquent principles, pilgrimage makes man attain the highest state as informed by the Quran. Surely we created man of the best stature. Tin, 95-4. The Prophet, gives the following good news for the pilgrims. The greater pilgrimage and the lesser pilgrimage cleanse the pilgrims' sins as the nitric acid of the goldsmith cleans gold and silver. Nesai, Tirmizi. The following hadith also gives good news for the pilgrims. The Prophet, said, Whoever performs Hajj for Allah's pleasure and does not have sexual relations with his wife and does not do evil or sins, then he will return as if he were born anew, without any sins remaining. Bukhari, Volume 2, Book 26, number 596. This good news is valid for those who have performed the Hajj in an acceptable way, which is called al-Hajj al-Mabrur. Those who have achieved this level of pilgrimage also attain the following virtues. 1. Sense of responsibility. 2. Pardoning nature. 3. Keeping the body and actions pure. 4. Islamic brotherhood. Consciousness that superiority is only on the basis of taqwa, i.e. awe of Allah. Legal earning. 7. Sincerity. Hence, pilgrimage is not just an act of worship performed for Allah. It also develops man's capabilities. It develops the social, moral and political condition of the Ummah. It teaches the universal aspects of Islam more than any other act of worship. On the personal level, pilgrimage gives man a chance to evaluate his actions and behaviors and to correct his mistakes for the future life. 56324562928500481838024638000 Pilgrimage is obligatory once in a lifetime. However, as in the daily prayers and fasting, a believer can perform supererogatory Pil N 267. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and form. Grimmages as well. Some Muslims consider going on pilgrimage more than once as a waste of money. This kind of heedless remark borders on disbelief, and only those who do not understand the purpose and the transformative power of Hajj can utter such a remark. From the time of happiness, the time of the Prophet, Muslims have always practiced the supererogatory acts of worship with devotion and love. These willingly performed acts of worship bring the servant closer to Allah, as stated in the well-known hadith. They give depth and insight to the soul. They render the Muslim more generous and merciful. Allah becomes their eyes by which they see, the ears by which to hear. In short, their acts such as hearing, thinking become guided by the divine light. This spiritual development can be realized through supererogatory acts of worship and showing mercy to the creation. The great Imam Abu Hanifa went on pilgrimage 55 times. I think this shows the significance of the pilgrimage, and there is no need for extra words. N 268. The Lesser Pilgrimage, UMRAH. In addition to the Hajj, the Greater Pilgrimage, which is performed only on fixed days of the year, one can also perform the Lesser Pilgrimage called Umrah at any time of the year. Due to its performance at any time, it is also called the Lesser Pilgrimage. In Umrah, the pilgrim is not required to visit Arafat. The pilgrim only circumambulates the Kaaba and runs between the hills of Safa and Marwa. If it is performed in the month of Ramadan, the Prophet, J. said that its reward will be as high as the reward of the Greater Pilgrimage. When we visit the tomb of the Prophet, J. in Medina, we should realize that this is a place where we should be able to increase our love and respect for the Prophet, J. Only he was addressed as, my beloved, by Allah. Allah the Almighty also commanded us to love 8,134,353,365,500 His Messenger in the following verse. 123,888,522,923,500. 2332355965200 Pilgrimage to Mecca. Say, if your fathers and your sons and your brethren and your mates and your kinsfolk and property which you have acquired, and the loss of trade which you fear and dwellings which you like, are dearer to you than Allah and His Messenger and striving in His way, then wait till Allah brings about His command. And Allah does not guide the transgressing people. Tawbah, 9:24. Qadi Iyad deduces from this verse that Allah obliged the Ummah to love Himself as well as His Messenger. Hence nothing should be dearer to us than the Prophet, J. Neither our house, nor our family, or our work. Therefore, Imam Malik considers the honorable grave of the Prophet as holier than the Kaaba itself, since all worlds and the creation were created for his sake. For this reason we should visit Medina after completing the pilgrimage. Through visiting and smelling the earth of this land we should pay our humble respects to the Prophet, J. In that way we can benefit from his blessing. The Prophet, J, informs us that visiting him after his death is the same as visiting him in his lifetime. Daraqutni, Sunan, 278. However, one should show great respect while visiting the tomb of the Prophet, J. One day, while Imam Malik was in the mosque of the Prophet, J. Jafar Mansur, the caliph of the time, came to the mosque in order to ask him a few questions. A sch equals Olerly debate start. Ed between them. However, with the fervor of the debate, the caliph started to raise his voice. Imam Malik warned him and said, "O caliph, lower your voice here. Here, Allah warned more virtuous people than you not to raise their voices," referring to the verse. "O you who believe, do not raise your voices above the voice of the Prophet, and do not speak loud to him as you speak loud to one another, lest your deeds become null while you do not perceive." Hujurat, 49-2. The caliph appreciated the imam's high manners in the presence of the Prophet, J, and asked him, 481,838,021,971,000 inches O Imam. Shall I turn my face towards Rada, the tomb of the Prophet, or towards the Kaaba? N 269. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and Form. Imam Malik answered, "When in Madinah turn your face towards Rada, for the creation and the Kaaba were created for his sake. All humanity needs the intercession of Prophet Muhammad, J. Qadi. Iyaz, Sifa al-Sharif." Some Muslims ignore this fact and prevent Muslims turning their faces towards the Rada. They say greet the Prophet, J, and leave him. Turn your faces towards the Kaaba. They forget that the Prophet, J, is alive. The Quran informs us that martyrs are alive, and similarly the prophets who occupy a higher place than them are also alive. In particular, the honored leader of the worlds, the Prophet Muhammad, J, possesses an extraordinary life. In short, the greatest gift that pilgrims should take back to their countries is the good characteristics of the Holy Lands. They should carry back memories by continuing to practice the good virtues they cultivated during their visit. They will thus function as windows for the spiritual beauties of the Holy Lands to reach those who have not yet gone. The spiritual architect of Pakistan, Muhammad Iqbal, asked the following questions to the pilgrims who had just returned from pilgrimage. N 270. You have visited Madinah, the enlightened. With what have you filled your hearts from the spiritual market of Madinah? The material gifts you have brought, such as the head coverings, the prayer beads and prayer rugs, will fade away after a short while. What have you brought as the spiritual gifts of Madinah that will not fade away? Among your gifts have you brought the characteristics of submission and trustworthiness of Abu Bakr, the justice of Hadrat Omar, the generosity and modesty, Haya, of Hadrat Uthman. Will you be able to give to the Ummah, which is suffering from 1,000 different problems, a hope from the time of happiness? Asr-i-Sada. 81,343,541,529,000. May Allah make us among those who have benefited from the spiritual blessings of the Holy Lands, and make us among those who have visited the Messenger of Allah with a sensitive, burning heart. 123,888,522,923,500. 2332355971550 Pilgrimage to Mecca. May Allah grant us a life of submission to Allah and trust in Him. Let our refuge and helper be only Him. May Allah make us fulfill the duty of pilgrimage with a heart that feels the blessings of the Holy Lands. N 481,838,011,811,000 N 271. 14,154,159,398,000. The holy month of Ramadan. And fasting. The month of Ramadan, in which was revealed the Quran, a guidance for mankind, and clear proofs of the guidance, and the criterion, of right and wrong. Baqarah, 2-185. 317563596520000 The holy month of Ramadan and fasting. M. The holy month of Ramadan is a month of opportunity for reward granted to us from Allah, the Almighty. In this month we Remember the value of the favors Allah has given to us, which we normally take for granted and for which we do not give sufficient thanks. The aim of fasting is to achieve taqwa, awe, and curb the selfish soul, nafs, to discipline it and bring it under control. Fasting must be performed in an attitude of worship if we really wish to benefit from its blessings. Because of fasting we can attain high qualities such as patience, a strong will, distancing ourselves from the base desires of the nafs. Like a shield, fasting also protects the honor of the believer by freeing him from the endless preoccupation for eating and drinking like the beasts. One of the benefits of fasting is that it gives courage and resistance in times of famine and calamities. It also teaches us to be thankful and happy with the bounties of Allah, the Almighty. When we fast we understand the difficulties of the poor who suffer from lack of food, and as a result, our mercy for them is strengthened. This kind of understanding prevents social disturbances and class divisions. We can safely say that the nature of Islamic worship does not permit the class divisions we witness in other nations. Fasting, Psalm, and prayer, Salat. 481,838,020,129,500, Namaz. Make everyone equal in front of Allah. No one is exempted from these forms of worship except those who have a valid excuse. N 275. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and Form. N 276. Because of these positive effects of fasting, it was prescribed not only for Muslims but also for the previous nations. Allah, the Almighty, says, O you who believe, fasting is prescribed for you, as it was prescribed for those before you, so that you may guard against evil. For a certain number of days, Baqarah, 2, 183-184. Islam prescribes a variety of styles of worship for the believers. Different kinds of worship in Islam are meant to cure different kinds of spiritual diseases. These diseases increase especially in the easy times of prosperity and health. In the Meccan period, Muslims did not have a chance to develop such spiritual diseases, because the struggle to survive under such difficult conditions occupied them. However, after the emigration to Medina the financial situation of the Muslims improved. They were also safe from the persecution of the Meccan non-believers. In order to prevent Muslims from the harm that can come with the abuse of wealth and the enjoyment of bounties, there was a need for a kind of abstention or restriction for using worldly possessions. It was time for fasting to be ordained in order to preserve the spiritual health of the believers. As a matter of fact, fasting is like a medicine against the diseases, whether physical or spiritual. Hence, fasting is prescribed for a limited number of days, not for the entire year. If certain medicines for acute conditions are used all year, the immune system of the body can get accustomed to it and it may not sufficiently benefit the user. Similarly, fasting should be carried out in determined times. If we fast continuously, it does not help much to cure the illnesses and may weaken the body to the point of making it difficult to fulfill the normal responsibilities that Islam requires. Due to this reason, the Prophet, did not allow his companions to fast every day. 81,343,579,502,000 all Muslims are obliged to fast in the same month of the year, that is Ramadan. This strengthens the bonds of unity in the Ummah as well as making fasting easier. This sense of unity gives our spiritual life extra richness and vividness. Another aspect of fasting is that the month of fasting is a lunar month. Hence it moves from one season to 123,888,522,542,500. 317563597155000 The holy month of Ramadan and fasting. Another throughout the solar calendar, and we fast on hot summer days as well as on short and cold winter days. Because each day of the year pays respect to Ramadan in a certain period, they are all blessed by it. This variety in the times of fasting also gives a variety of spiritual pleasure and tastes. This makes fasting easy and a different experience each time a believer fasts. We can see this richness also in the verse, which commands fasting. The verse first informs us, O you who believe, fasting is prescribed for you, then in order to comfort us the verse states that it is also prescribed for other nations. As it was prescribed for those before you. Finally, the verse states that fasting is not meant for all the days of the year. For a certain number of days. Baqarah 2. 183–184. After that, Allah, the Almighty, states the benefits of fasting and its conditions. The month of Ramadan, in which was revealed the Quran, is a guidance for mankind, and a clear proof of the guidance, and the criterion of right and wrong. And whosoever of you is present, let him fast the month, and whosoever of you is sick or on a journey, let him fast the same number of other days. Allah desireth for you ease, He desireth not hardship for you, and He desireth that ye should complete the period, and that ye should magnify Allah for having guided you, and that you may give thanks. Baqarah 2–185. This verse also shows us that the aim of fasting is to glorify Allah and to give Him thanks. In this sense, fasting has a positive influence on the rest of other kinds of worship. Shaqiq Balki says, "Worshipping Allah as He deserves is a difficult art. However, it can be achieved through solitude and fasting. Reducing the intake of food is also a modern method of medical treatment. Dieting is the first condition of being healthy, even in the practice of modern medicine. By fasting, the believers follow it in the best way, learning self-discipline. Hunger is also a strong medicine with which to control the nafs. It was narrated that when the nafs was created, it had pride. It dared to. 4818380273050056324541084500 say it's Lord. You are you and I am I. However, when Allah punished End 277. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and form. End 278. It with hunger it understood its mistake and professed its weakness and nothingness in front of its Creator. Hence for the health of the nafs there is no better cure than hunger. Jalaluddin Rumi says, "The real nourishment of man is the light of Allah. Giving excessive material food is not good for him. The real food of man is divine love and intelligence. The discomfort of man is due to his forgetting his soul's nourishment and caring only for the nourishment of the body. This body is not satisfied. It wants more and more. Because of this disease of greediness his face is pale and legs are shaky. His heart is beating with discomfort. Where is the worldly nourishment and where is the nourishment of infinity? How great the difference between them! Allah said for the martyrs, they are nurtured. There is no mouth and no body for this nourishment, they are taken by the soul." Hadrat Luqman advises his son, "When your stomach is full, your intelligence sleeps oblivious to wisdom and the limbs are lazy for worship." A friend of Allah said, "I take refuge in Allah from the Sufi who fills his stomach with all sorts of food and corrupts it." The mother of believers, Aisha said, "Try to open the doors of the malakut, spiritual world." They asked, "How?" She answered, "Through hunger and thirst." The great friend of Allah Mahmud Sami Ramazanoglu emphasizes the significance of eating and drinking little in his book Mukarram Insan, The Perfect Man, and says, "They asked the doctors, 'What is the best cure?' They answered, 'Eating little.' The people of wisdom are asked how they found so much power and courage for worshipping Allah. They answered, 'Eating little.' The ascetics are asked, 'What makes the tie between man and Allah stronger?' They answered, 'Eating little.' The scholars are asked, 'What is the best state for learning?' They answered, 'Being in a state of hunger, rather than satiety, and eating little.' 81,343,524,066,500 There are so many benefits in eating little, never eating until the stomach is filled. 123,888,523,050,500. 3175635971550 The holy month of Ramadan and fasting. In moderate hunger there is clearness of mind and heart, the memory is stronger. In the state of being overly full, there is forgetfulness and foolishness. In moderate hunger there is gentleness of the heart. The heart benefits and takes pleasure from worship and supplication. With a full stomach the heart is insensitive and takes no pleasure in worship. In moderate hunger there is softness of heart and humility. Satiety produces insolence, conceit, pride and bragging. In moderate hunger one thinks of the poor and hungry, whereas a man with a full stomach never remembers the poor and the needy. In moderate hunger the appetite, needs and wishes of the animal soul are broken. When full the animal soul is strong and the desires find strength. In moderate hunger the body is in an agile and aware condition. When full it feels sleepy and careless. In moderate hunger one feels ready to worship and give service to Allah. When the stomach is full one feels lazy and lax. In moderate hunger, the body is healthier. Sickness disappears. Overeating makes the body feel worn out and sick. In moderate hunger the body feels light and spacious, making one cheerful. In moderate hunger one feels more generous and ready to provide support for the poor with charity. On the other hand, those who do not experience hunger at all, do not understand the sufferings of the poor. Also, for this, in the heat on the fearful day of judgment, the servant will come into a state of coolness and shade. Fullness produces a state that goes from stinginess to wasteful spending, which leads to the destruction of the servant. 481,838,094,742,000. In other words, a full stomach urges the animal soul and ego to be active in order to satisfy its base desires. On the other hand, fasting when it is performed without going to the extreme opens up the faculties of meditation and makes the human heart more sensitive to the divine realities. The following hadith summarizes what we have said so far. Fast and find, both spiritual and physical, health. Tabarani. N. 279. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and Form. N. 280. The practices of the great prophets of Allah also revealed to us the significance of fasting in order to reach spiritual perfection. Fasting was one of the most effective methods used by Allah the Almighty for perfecting the prophets. Through fasting, the prophets were prepared to receive revelation from Allah. As an example, Moses, a.s. fasted 40 days and nights when he was waiting to receive revelation on the mountain of Sinai. After this fasting period the Torah was revealed to him. Similarly, Jesus fasted the same number of days before he received the Injil, Evangel or Gospel. Similarly, our Prophet Muhammad, J. spent a month in the cave of Hira near Mecca, worshipping Allah and contemplating his greatness. After this preparation period he received the divine message from the Archangel Gabriel, and his heart was filled with the light of the divine blessings. All this shows that the real benefit of fasting is spiritual rather than physical. Hence when we fast we must only aim to worship Allah, the Almighty. If we aim for worldly goals such as cutting down on our spending for food or losing extra weight, we miss out on the real benefits. We can also say this for other acts of worship. For example, if one performs the daily salat for its value as exercise and to keep fit, he is not considered as performing Allah's command. Rather, such a person is following the command of his ego under the guise of worship. All acts of worship should be performed with only one aim in mind, to attain Allah's pleasure. To do this one needs to train and educate the heart, to clean it from such base thoughts. We also cannot attain Allah's pleasure through these sort of egoistic goals. In order to benefit fully from the holy month of Ramadan, the following advice of the Prophet, J. should be followed. To repeat the Shahada. To ask forgiveness from Allah and to chant His names. To perform all possible good deeds, Amal al-Salihah, in order to attain paradise. 81,343,523,368,000 to refrain from what has been forbidden, haram, so as to save ourselves from the flames of hell. 123,888,522,987,000. 317563596520000 The holy month of Ramadan and fasting. To give charity generously and to make those whose hearts are broken happy. To give iftari, food upon opening of the fast, to the believers. Of course, there is no limit to what one can do as a good deed. Everybody should do his best in order to compete in doing any good that is for the good of the Muslim community. Ramadan is the season for perfecting the believers morally. As we are careful not to use our mouths for eating during Ramadan, we must similarly be careful not to use them for backbiting and useless talk. Otherwise we miss the real target of fasting, which is to perfect the manners of the believer in accordance with Islamic morality. Concerning this, the Prophet J. said, "Fasting is a protecting shield as long as the fasting person does not harm his fast." The companions asked the Prophet J. how the fast is damaged. The Prophet J. answered, by lying and backbiting. Nasai, Mujam al-Azat. The backbiters refrain from eating during the daytime, but because of their backbiting they eat human flesh. Hence their physical fast is broken. For such people Sufyan Sori says, backbiting breaks the fast. Similarly, the famous scholar Mujahid says that backbiting and lying break one's fast. For those who contaminate their prayers, salat, and fasting, psalm, by backbiting, slandering and offending others in a heedless and cruel manner, the Prophet J. says, among many who fast their share is only hunger. There are many who perform night prayers and their share is only exhaustion. In another similar hadith the Prophet J. said, whoever does not give up forged speech and evil actions, Allah is not in need of his leaving his food and drink, i.e. Allah will not accept his fasting. Bukhari, Volume 3, Book 31, number 127. These hadiths clearly show us that it is very important to control our behavior in Ramadan. We must prepare our heart and mind for fasting. It should not be done heedlessly and carelessly. We must purr. 48183802413005632454070350 form our salats with extra care and attentiveness, strengthen our soul. 281. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and Form. N 282. By the remembrance of Allah, recite the Quran with an attentive heart and mind, clean our wealth and our consciousness by giving charity and zakat. We should not forget that the Holy Quran was revealed in the month of Ramadan and we must show extra care in order to apply the injunctions of the Quran in our lives. The real recitation of the Quran is performed by the heart. The external eyes function as glasses for the eye of the heart. There is a close connection between Ramadan and the Quran. Ramadan is the time to listen to the voice of the Quran, the voice which reminds us of our real destination, which we will arrive at after death. The Prophet J. said, fasting and the Quran will be intercessors on the day. Judgment. Ahmad B. Hanbal, Musnad, 2, 174. Fasting is half of patience. Tirmidhi, Da'awat, 86. The reward of fasting will be determined in the hereafter on the Day of Judgment. In a hadith al-Qudsi, as narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, Allah said, all the deeds of Adam's sons, people, are for them, except fasting which is for me, and I will give the reward for it. Fasting is a shield or protection from the fire and from committing sins. If one of you is fasting, he should avoid sexual relations with his wife and quarreling, and if somebody should fight or quarrel with him, he should say, I am fasting. By him in whose hands my soul is, the unpleasant smell coming out from the mouth of a fasting person is better in the sight of Allah than the smell of musk. There are two pleasures for the fasting person, one at the time of breaking his fast, and the other at the time when he will meet his Lord. Then he will be pleased because of his fasting. Bukhari, Volume 3, Book 31, number 128. The Quran in the following verse enumerates the classes of those who will receive forgiveness and a mighty reward, mentioning those who fast. 81,343,559,626,500 inches. Surely the men who submit and the women who submit, and the believing men and the believing women, and the obeying men and the obeying women, and the truthful men and the truthful women, and the steadfast men and the steadfast women, and the 123,888,522,669,500. 317563597155000 The holy month of Ramadan and fasting. Humble men and the humble women, and the almsgiving men and the almsgiving women, and the fasting men and the fasting women, and the men who guard their private parts and the women who guard, and the men who remember Allah much and the women who remember Allah has prepared for them forgiveness and a mighty reward. Ahzab, 33-35. The Prophet J. also informs us that the believer who fasts will be rewarded twice, once in this world and once in the next. In this world the reward is at sunset at the time of breaking the fast. The second is when he meets his Lord, when he will grant it a very high place. However, we are not informed of the reward in order to increase our love for fasting. In worldly contests sometimes rewards are kept hidden in order to increase the suspense for them. Fasting is such a form of worship where through it one can learn how to value the favors of Allah, the Almighty. The fasting man gets a chance to understand the difficulties of poverty and hunger. Through fasting the believer saves himself from slavery to the material and attains the highest quality of self-control. In addition to fasting, offering the Taraweeh Salat in congregation after the late night prayer of Isha is also a sunnah in the month of Ramadan. In many places throughout the world the entire Quran is recited during this month and in this prayer. However, these salats should be performed with devotion, slowly and not in a quick manner. Unfortunately, in some mosques people pray Taraweeh Salat as if they are racing with each other. The Prophet, informs us that he made the Taraweeh prayers his sunnah so as to be followed by the Muslim community. He further stated that if a believer fasts in the month of Ramadan expecting reward only from Allah, and performs the Taraweeh Salat, he becomes as sinless as on the day he was born from his mother. Ahmad B. Hanbal, Nasai. Another important point in Ramadan is to have the meal at Sahur. Sahur is taken before dawn begins, when the time of fasting starts. 56324559245500481838020955000. Normally people have their iftar, fast-breaking meal, on time, but most people neglect having sahur since it is taken very early. We must be N283. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and form. Strong-minded about having something, even if it is a glass of water. Concerning this subject is narrated by Anas bin Malik, the Prophet, says. N 284. Take sahur as there is a blessing in it. Bukhari, Volume 3, Book 31, number 146. As narrated by Sahl bin Sa'd, Allah's apostle said, the people will remain on the right path as long as they hasten the breaking of the fast. Bukhari, Volume 3, Book 31, number 12. In order to realize the reality of the holy month of Ramadan, one needs to open his heart to the rain of forgiveness and divine blessings. The rocks and the seas do not benefit from these rains, only fertile lands benefit from it. In other words, through awareness of Allah's presence and giving thanks to Him for His favors we should benefit. From this month, the Prophet, informs us the following good news. When the month of Ramadan starts, the gates of the heaven are opened and the gates of hell are closed and the devils are chained. Bukhari, Volume 3, Book 31, number 123. This means that those who fast in the real sense of fasting do not commit sins. As research conducted in Islamic countries, the crime rate falls to its lowest rate in the month of Ramadan. The evil of Satan is limited, however, the evil of the ego continues. Hence Muslims should be vigilant against their base desires. The Prophet, also informs us that in the month of Ramadan paradise adorns itself with all kind of charms and supplicates Allah saying, O my Lord! In this month, let people enter me. Tabarani. Fasting is described as physically refraining from food, drink and sexual intercourse, but it also requires the protection of the soul from all animal-like desires and inclinations. The Sufis emphasize the spiritual dimension of fasting and consider it an essential part of fasting. As one refrains from eating and drinking, similarly he should refrain from vices such as backbiting, lying, and other base desires. The 8,134,352,603,500 Prophet, warns us in this regard and says, whoever does not give 123,888,519,685,000. 317563597155000 The holy month of Ramadan and fasting. Up false speech and evil actions. Allah is not in need of his abstaining from food and drink, i.e. Allah will not accept his fasting. Bukhari, Kitabus Sawm, Volume 3, Book 31, number 127. Tirmidhi, Bavuz Psalm. Abu Dawud, Psalm, 236, Ibn Majah, 122. As required in this hadith, we should refrain from all sorts of vices that will damage our fasting. In particular, the vice of anger and hostile behavior should be eliminated. Allah's Apostle, J. said, fasting is a shield. The person observing fasting should avoid sexual relations with his wife and should not behave foolishly and impudently, and if somebody fights with him or abuses him, he should tell him twice, I am fasting. The Prophet, J. added, by him in whose hands my soul is, the smell coming out from the mouth of a fasting person is better in the sight of Allah than the smell of musk. Allah says about the fasting person, he has left his food, drink and desires for my sake. The fast is for me. So I will reward the fasting person for it, and the reward of good deeds is multiplied 10 times. Bukhari, Volume 3, Book 31, number 118. Another name for the month of Ramadan is the month of patience and forbearance. Some commentators of the Quran explains the Arabic of fasting psalm with the words sabr meaning patience, implying the similarity of these two words. With this respect, psalm is to be resilient against the base desires, and to be patient against the difficulties. In Islam, patience occupies the central place among other good characteristics. Patience is half of faith and the key to salvation. Through it one attains paradise. Patience is to be resilient against unpleasant events without damaging our balance and to submit to the will of Allah. The prophets as well as the friends of Allah reached high states and the help of Allah through patience. Having to show patience in this world gives us a bitter taste, but it will give sweet fruits in the hereafter. In order to lessen the bitterness of patience, we should contemplate the favors of Allah that are bestowed on us. We should think that there is wisdom behind the calamities, and if patience is shown there will be great rewards in return. The most important principle in the concept of patience is that a Muslim should show it at the first. 4818380222250056324540513000 strike of the calamity. When the pain of the disaster has lessened, then end 285. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and form. Patience will not be rewarded as such. The divine name, as Sabor, is most beautifully reflected in the prophets and friends of Allah. As the most important legacy given to us, patience is the most important characteristic both in times of happiness as well as of calamities, in times of poverty as well as wealth. In order to fast in the consciousness that Allah is with us, we should carefully fulfill the components of fasting such as sahur, tarawih, reciting the Quran, engaging in humble and earnest supplication and in the remembrance of the name, attributes, of Allah. The time of breaking the fast is a good time when Allah accepts the prayers and answers the supplications. It is the time of unity with Allah. To spend this time with others and to share the blessings is important, since this is the source of mercy and spiritual contentment. Therefore, the Prophet, J. advises us to share our food with the Muslims at iftar. Whoever gives an iftari, meal to break the fast, to a fasting person, he will be rewarded the same amount with the fasting person, and the reward of the fasting person will not be lessened, due to extra reward given to the host. Tirmidhi, Psalm 90. When the poor companions heard this tradition, they came to the Prophet, J. and said that they did not have the means to give as much food as the rich. Upon this the Prophet, J. told them that even if they gave half a date or a little milk in order to open the fast, they would be rewarded the same amount as the rich Sahabis, companions, who gave full iftaris. N 286. In addition to obligatory fasting, we should also perform voluntary fasting. The characteristic of the chosen slaves of Allah is trustworthiness. This can be reached through having good intention and purification of the ego. The Prophet, J. and his companions practiced voluntary fasting quite often under severe conditions in the heat of the 81,343,520,574,000 Arabian Peninsula. Some of them even did not have garments to protect them from the fierce heat. They would fast even the very hot days. 123,888,522,860,000. 31756359652000 Holy month of Ramadan and fasting. They would cover their bodies with their hands in order to protect them from the excessive heat. Under all these conditions they would continue voluntary fasting by feeling the taste of excessive spiritual contentment. For those who fast voluntarily, there are occasions where they might have to break their fast before sunset due to an invitation or some other reasons. Depending on the situation, a believer may either prefer to complete the fast or can break it in order to please his friends and make up for it on a different day. Abu Sa'id, may Allah be happy with him, narrated the following incident. One day I had prepared food for the Prophet, J, and his companions. When I served the food, one of the companions said, "I am fasting." Upon this the Prophet, J, stated, "Your brother has invited you and made preparations for you, and now you are saying that you are fasting. Break your fast now and make up for it on another day." Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud. On another occasion the Prophet, J, and some of his companions ate food while Bilal was fasting. The Prophet, J, commented upon the situation of Bilal and said, "We are eating our sustenance. Bilal's sustenance is in paradise." Ibn Majah. These traditions give us the choice of completing a voluntary fast or breaking it, as the conditions require. Allah will judge all our actions in life. The best of times are the ones that we spend with Him for His sake. When we enter the grave, all our transient reminiscences and memories will be buried as well. However, only the good actions we have performed for the sake of Allah will benefit us. The Prophet, J, states that when a believer dies, his ritual prayers, salat, will rest above his head, his charity on the right and his fasting on the left. Fadal al-Amal. 48183804159250. A lifetime spent that was not for the sake of Allah is a deception, like the vision in the desert heat. It has no reality but is only an illusion of the mind. N 287. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and Form. N 288. By the mercy of Allah, we follow the advice of the Prophet, J, and appreciate the great chance that the holy months of many Ramadans offer to us, so that way we can perform good actions and as we struggle to decrease our mistakes. The Prophet, J, says, if people really knew the nature and blessings of Ramadan, they would wish that Ramadan would continue all year. Ibn Huzaymah, Sahih, 3, 190. The holy Ramadan is a climate of forgiveness. In this month all the pillars of Islam can be performed except pilgrimage. However, Ramadan prepares the believers spiritually for the duty of pilgrimage by refining their morality. In pilgrimage, Muslims are trained to be nice and not aggressive, disobedient slaves. Ramadan is a great opportunity for all the believers to attain Allah's pleasure. It is the season of blessing and salvation. As the Prophet, J, says, the beginning of Ramadan is mercy, its middle salvation and its end safety from hell. Ibn Huzaymah, Sahih, 3, page .191. The month of Ramadan is like the season of spring where the trees bloom and the greenery is everywhere. Similarly, the dried trees of faith find life in Ramadan through the water of good actions. However, those who do not know the value of Ramadan are in great loss, as stated in the following hadith. One day the Prophet, J, asked us to sit closely around the minbar, the pulpit from where he gave his Friday sermon. Hence, we all gathered around. The Prophet, J, started to climb the stairs. On the first step he said, Amen. On the second step he again repeated the same phrase, Amen. On the third step he again said, Amen. When he got down from the minbar we asked him, O Prophet, we heard something that we have never heard from you before. Why did you say Amin 3 times? The Prophet, J, said, 81,343,538,925,500. When I was climbing the first step, Gabriel came to me and said, the curse of Allah be on those who did not use the chance of Ramadan to attain divine forgiveness. And I said, Amen. 123,888,522,987,000. 3175635971550 The holy month of Ramadan and fasting. When I was on the second step, Gabriel prayed, "Let be the curse be on those who did not say, 'Peace be on you,' when your name was mentioned." And I said, "Ameen." In the third step, Gabriel again said, "Let be the curse of Allah be on those who did not attain paradise although they survived to the old age of their parents or only one of them, i.e. those who did not serve either of their parents or both of them in their old age and attained the big reward as a consequence." I again said, "Ameen." Hakim, Mustadrak, IV, 170. This hadith clearly indicates the miserable end of three groups of people. The first group are those who did not worship Allah in the month of forgiveness Ramadan. The second group are those who did not say peace be on him when his name was mentioned. And the last group are those who did not look after their parents in their old age. We should be very careful in these three important things if we want to enter paradise. In addition to fasting, the days of Ramadan should be valued and adorned with other good acts, in particular helping the disadvantaged. The orphans, the widows, the helpless, the sick, the poor and other needy groups should be supported financially and they should not be left alone to face their problems. They should be given a friendly hug, in that way the value of Ramadan will be realized. These kinds of charitable acts will cause Allah's forgiveness to burst endlessly. The good servants of Allah who fulfill these kinds of acts will be covered with divine mercy and blessings. Allah opens the doors of mercy and closes the doors of hell. The Prophet, J. states, "Charity prevents 70 kinds of calamities." Suyuti, Al-Jamayuz Sagir. v. 2, page .52. Charity extinguishes the wrath of Allah. Tirmidhi, Zakat, 28. 481,838,044,132,500 Luqman Hakim advised his son, "O my son, when you commit a sin knowingly or unknowingly, repent to Allah immediately and give charity." N 289. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and Form. N 290. In short, the charity given in the month of Ramadan is rewarded excessively, and the Prophet, J. states the exclusiveness of the month in the following words: "O Messenger of Allah, which charity is best in terms of reward?" The Prophet, J. answered, "The charity given in the month of Ramadan." Tirmidhi. The friends of Allah divide the charity givers into three groups. The people of Sharia, obedience to the law, give charity from their wealth. The people of Hakika, reality, give from their souls in addition to from their wealth. The Gnostics, Arifun, give from their hearts since their hearts are always in the presence of Allah. The lovers give from their souls since their souls are content with the manifestations of divine destiny writ 10 for them. The charity of the rich is realized through the removal of money from their purse. The charity of the Sufis is to remove everything else other than Allah from their hearts. The charity of the worshippers, Abid, is from their nafs since they do not refrain from sacrificing their bodies in worship and service of Allah. The generous people whose hearts are also rich do not resent donating their money to the poor. The poor and the weak become happy with the presence of the rich who give thanks to Allah for His favors, by donating their riches to the poor. As the April clouds water the dry lands with blessed rain, similarly the merciful, generous Pople manifest the mercy of Allah over His slaves. The more sincerely and lovingly the rich donate, the more benefits and blessings are received by the one who receives. Such giving and taking become a source of felicity for both sides. The spiritual deepness of the donor is reflected from the one who receives. This is called a trade that without loss, tijaratan lan tabura. On the other hand, Allah, the Almighty, states in the Quran, 81,343,524,384,000 inches, O ye men! It is ye that have need of Allah. But Allah is the one free of all wants, worthy of all praise. Fatir, 35-15. 123,888,523,050,500. 3175635971550 The holy month of Ramadan and fasting. Therefore the only real rich one is Allah. All the slaves of Allah, rich or poor, should realize that they are always in need of Allah and feel the state of poverty to Allah at all times. The Sufis and great scholars, in order to show the high status of poverty, said, "Poverty is our pride." These words are a sign of wisdom, since it is the preference of the richness of the heart over the richness of the worldly possessions. This feeling is the source of virtues both in the good-hearted rich and poor people. This phrase also implies to be content, qanat, with what one has, even if it is a small amount. If a rich person has the characteristic of feeling content with what he has, he will protect himself from being miserly or prodigal. If a poor person has this characteristic, she will lead a life of chastity and will only ask his needs from Allah. As Rumi states, what befits to the generous is to donate to the poor, and what befits to the lover is to sacrifice his life for the sake of the beloved. The life of the Prophet, J, sets the highest example of giving charity, and the great scholar Ibn Qayyim describes the generosity of the Prophet, J, in the following way. The Prophet, J, was not like anyone in giving charity. He never gathered worldly possessions in his house. If someone asked from him something, he would not reply without giving neither too little nor too much. When he gave, he would give without the fear of becoming poor. For him, giving charity was the highest pleasure. His pleasure was much more than the one who received the donation for an urgent need. He was the most generous of people in giving in the way of Allah. His right hand was like a generous wind that scatters the bone ties of Allah's mercy. If a needy person told about his suffering to him, he would be very sad and would prefer the needy to his own needs, and sometimes would give his own food and dress to the needy person. In the commentary of Hazan, it narrates that Hadrat Habir said, "A little child came to the Prophet, J, and told him that his mother needed a shirt. At that time the Prophet, J, did not have any shirt except 4818380171450056324540005000, the one he was wearing. Therefore he told the child to come back later." N 291. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and Form. N 292. The child left, but after a while he came back again and told the Prophet, J, that his mother wanted the shirt the Prophet, J, was wearing. Upon this, the Prophet, J, entered his room and took off the shirt and gave it to the child. After a short while the prayer time commenced and Bilal started calling the believers to prayer by reciting Azan. After making the Azan, the companions waited for the Prophet, J, to lead the congregation, but he did not come to the mosque. When they went to his room in order to check what happened, they understood that the Prophet, J, would not come to the mosque since he had no shirt to wear. This led them to contemplate a long time about the generosity of the Prophet, J. Umar b. Abdulaziz, who was honored by being called the fifth caliph of Islam due to his piety and justice, stated, "The congregational prayers take you to halfway to Allah. Fasting opens the gates of the king's palace and charity takes you to the presence of the king." In conclusion, we should do our best to use this opportunity given to us in the current year. We never know if we shall be privileged again to reach the holy month next year. Apart from fasting and performing our prayers in the mosque, we should recite the holy word of Allah. We must give charity generously to the poor. The Prophet, J, informed us that the best charity is the one which is given in the month of Ramadan. By combining all these good deeds, we must turn to Allah in humbleness and sincerity. May Allah help us to perform fasting in the best way. Ubayd b. Umair narrates, "Human beings will be resurrected in the hereafter as naked, excessively hungry and thirsty. Those who fed others for the sake of Allah will be fed, and those who gave water for the sake of Allah will be quenched, and those who gave clothes for his sake will be clothed." The Prophet, J, says, "O human being, give charity to others so as you will be donated to as well." Bukhari, Muslim. 81,343,545,720,000. The reality of charity is explained in the best way by Rumi. Wealth does not decrease by giving charity pro. Protects wealth from destruction. 123,888,522,987,000. 3175635965200 The Holy Month of Ramadan and Fasting. The alms dues you pay become the guards of your purse, the salats you pray become your shepherd protecting you from the wolves and other troubles. Those who sow grains at seed time make their granary empty, but at harvest time they receive back their seed many-fold. In exchange for one empty granary he receives back many more full granaries. On the other hand, if the wheat is not sown and is left in the granary, the fleas, worms and mice devour it. Allah, the Almighty states in the Quran, "And spend out of what we have given you before death comes to one of you." Munafiqun 63-10. Those who hoard up gold and silver and do not spend it in Allah's way, announce to them a painful chastisement. Tawbah 9:34. The alms due and voluntary charity are given for the sake of Allah. Therefore they should be given respectfully as if Allah is receiving them. The Prophet, emphasizing this point says, "Without doubt, charity is received by Allah's hands, of power, before it is taken by the hands of the poor. Allah takes it first and then gives it to the poor." Munawi, Kanz al-Haqiq. The following hadith also clarifies this fact. Allah's apostle said, "If one gives in charity what equals one date fruit of honestly earned money and Allah accepts only honestly earned money, Allah takes it in his right hand, and then enlarges its reward for that person who has given it, as any one of you brings up his baby horse, so much so that it becomes as big as a mountain." Bukhari, Volume 2, Book 24. Number 491. The significance of charity is also stressed by the Quran, since the verse confirms that it is Allah who receives the charity. Do they not know that Allah accepts repentance from his servants and takes alms, and that Allah is the oft-returning, to mercy, the merciful? Tawbah 9-104. Therefore a believer should be very careful when giving charity. 4818380590550056324544196000. The Quran describes the morality of giving charity in the following: N293. 948690106045000 ISLAM. Spirit and form. Verse. O you who believe, do not make your charity worthless by reproach and injury, like him who spends his property to be seen of men and does not believe in Allah and the Last Day. Baqarah 2-264. In order not to cause injury and reproach, the friends of Allah stand up in front of the needy to give their charity as a token of modesty. The Prophet Solomon, a.s. did not give his heart to worldly riches, and removed all sorts of worldly love from his heart. He used to visit the poor and enjoyed sitting with them. He would say that the poor suit the poor. In that way he displayed great modesty in spite of great riches. He had really realized the meaning of the verse. O mankind, ye are poor in your relation to Allah. And Allah, He is the Absolute, the owner of praise. Fatir 35-15. One day a heedless rich man asked him why he liked sitting with the poor. Why do you accompany the poor and eat with them? Solomon, a.s. answered, I only like those whose hearts are rich even though they are materially poor. A water jug when its mouth is closed can travel in the sea for many miles without sinking. Similarly, a Muslim's heart, when it is filled with the love of Allah and is closed to egoistic desires, can survive in the storms of worldly oceans. It reaches high stations without sinking into the traps of worldly glamour. A Muslim when his heart is tempered by generosity, mercy, modesty and love is not deceived with the glamour of the world and spiritually can attain high stations. Worldly adornments carry no value in the eyes of the soul. The only wish is that the heart be filled with the love and knowledge of Allah and in that way be able to fly in the heavens of divine love. N. 294. In the holy month of Ramadan there is one particular night called Laylat ul-Qadr, Night of Power, that should be spent in the worship of Allah. It is a special time when Allah spreads His mercy over the community of Muhammad, J. On this night, Allah bestows His spiritual 813,435,762,000 treasures on Muslims. For its great value, Allah, the Almighty, revealed 123,888,522,923,500. 317563597155000 The Holy Month of Ramadan and Fasting. A chapter named the Chapter of Power. It is a remembrance left by Allah from the time of the Prophet, J. for those who aspired to spiritual realities and for those who would like to attain mercy and forgiveness. The Prophet, J. stated, "Those who spend the night in worship and service, believing in its value and sacredness, their previous sins will be forgiven except those violating the rights of their fellow slaves." Buhari, Muslim. We can attain the reality of this when the believer purifies his soul from vices such as hypocrisy, ostentation, haughtiness, and spends this time with such acts as fasting, prayer, and giving charity. If we finish our spiritual training in the school of Ramadan successfully, then we will be qualified for a degree to celebrate the Eid ul-Fitr, the prayer and holiday at the end of the month. We are travelers on the spiritual path to attain the truth. One day we will pass the means that we have today, or they will be taken away from us. If we fail to utilize these opportunities, we will ultimately regret the lost days and the lost chances. The days of Ramadan are days of forgiveness and being freed from hell, and due to this, when the holy month passes, good believers shed tears out of sorrow. However, Allah, the Almighty, rewards us with the celebratory Eid as reward for our patience, fasting and other charitable acts. May Allah, the Almighty, make our lifetime one whole Ramadan and our mourning in the hereafter an Eid and feasting day. Amen.